Hey, it's an exciting day in America, or will it be? It's certainly been an interesting week to be an American. I mean, after all, Joe Biden is just so amazing. We're feting him, we're honoring him, we're praising him. We're so united as Democrats. It's amazing. It's like nobody ever wanted to throw him out. They don't want to remind you of the elder abuse that was been going on for years. They don't want to remind you that Kamala was privy to it. No, not at all. And then we're sending him off to greener pastures after that speech the other day. And here comes Nancy Pelosi, the hatchet woman, and she's holding up signs to prove she loves Joe Biden. She doesn't even know who was talking, what they were talking about, how she got blamed for anything. All she knows is she loves him, and there's going to be truth, justice in the American way, or justice for all, or whatever her speech was. And that's it. And now she just wants you to tell you things are going to be great and wonderful, and she's leaving a legacy for the choice of a new generation. They're going younger in the Democratic Party. We're going from 80-something to 60-something. Even Bill Clinton wants you to know he's 78, and he's blessing it all. So we're going with a woman who's got no record, so weak, so meek. I was just on the Democrat Party website and the convention website beforehand, and it's really kind of funny. You know, people all week, they've been talking about there's no policy pages on their website. It's quite funny. So, and we'll talk about that in a moment here. But what you've got is in a matter of few hours, Kamala Harris will be speaking to the nation, and she'll introduce herself to America. But don't you dare ask her a question. That would be rude. How dare you think you're even competent to ask her a question? She doesn't do questions. Shouldn't have to. 31 days, no questions, don't ask a question. I'm Bryan Rudnick, host of Rally for the Republic, back in the studio. And we're going to get into this and more after the break.
This is a battle cry for the American way of life and a relentless pursuit of truth and justice. It comes from a voice with unmatched experience and unyielding resolve. Join us as we dissect current events and tip the scales in your favor. This is Rally for the Republic with your host, Bryan Rudnick.
I'm Bryan Rudnick, host of Rally for the Republic. As I said, I'm back in studio after a primary election final push that I'll talk about later. Lots of media coverage, so much to cover. I'm not going to have time to do it all justice because, you know, at the 2024 Democratic National Convention, they've got delegates from all 50 states, or as Barack Obama likes to say, all 57. They've also got people from the U.S. territories. They got men who think they're women, women who think they're men, and they're all rallying around Kamala and Tim. That's Tall Tale Tim, in case you don't know. And they're in Chicago reliving the 1968 convention, where the Democrats apparently stand for, and they're going to tell their story of a supposedly proven track record of delivering progress for all Americans. They're saying the story is far from over. It's also far from reality. And we all know that because we've somehow survived the last 4 years. But they're coming together and they're building on their progress of anti-Semitism, and they're building on their progress of America Last, and they're building on their progress of Jew hatred, because they're claiming that's what's at stake in this election. And they're not uniting around their shared values of how they can tax and spend. And yet they're going to defend democracy and freedom for all future Americans. If you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you. So, fortunately, there's protests going outside telling us the real story of what's happening in the Democrat Party. But not to worry, they let in terrorist sympathizer Ilhan Omar, who came in to hug the sit-in protesters, the pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic protesters, while on one hand, they're putting up the parents of hostages held in Israel, and they're all going through that anti-Semitic love fest, while Israel is getting another 150 rockets lobbed into the north in the Golan Heights. That brings the total up to over 1,000 rockets fired on civilians in Israel this month. But hey, there's need for humanitarian aid in the south, and the Israelis are just mean and nasty people because they're defending their own country. What does that say? When we have a nominee for a political party in the United States who is heartbeats away from the Oval Office, and she is siding with these people who think Israel's committing genocide. Because I've yet to see Kamala Harris truly stand up for Israel. She's got her husband who says that she's adopted his faith. This man doesn't even adopt his own faith, and definitely his children didn't adopt it. So what is he talking about? She ain't no Kamala. No, she's a disaster waiting to happen. I mean, Israel was ready to enter into a ceasefire this week. Anthony Blinken might have actually done his job for a change instead of playing the guitar. And Kamala and her friends in Hezbollah, who is an Iranian proxy, clearly have a different agenda. So we're going to be stuck hearing from Kamala tonight, and I definitely am going to talk about that later, or at least in the next episode, because her party knows that they're about to lose major Jewish support. I mean, they can't decide. Are they anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-American? What are they? No, they're going to be all things to all people. Well, they hang out with Iranian proxies. Okay, interesting. And she won't sit down for an interview, won't stand up for an interview, won't show up on Fox News, keeps changing the dynamics of debates for Trump, because what happens if she gets caught flat-footed? What happens if somebody is smart enough to ask her a question that isn't part of her talking points? What is she going to do to justify her claims that AOC, by the way, got up the other day and said, you know, if you can't pay your rent, you can't pay your grocery bills, you can't do this, you can't blow your nose, whatever it is. Kamala's been there fighting for you. She's been there fighting for you. Why can't you pay for your grocery bills? Why can't you pay your rent? Kamala's been there fighting for you. Think about that. That's because she and AOC, they just want to tax the hell out of you and spend your money to prop up the illegal aliens that they don't want to hold accountable for violating our sovereign laws. That's right. That's what it is. It's going to be a complete house of cards as we go through 74 days of the rest of this election. Kamala Harris is paper thin. She's wearing that shiny veneer pantsuit, and it could crumble, but we got to stay on message as a Republican Party because the media doesn't want you to figure out, you, the American public, they don't want to figure out that Kamala has an economic plan. So what is that economic plan? Well, we'll talk about the plagiarism in a second, but Kamala has an economic plan that, you know, I asked my staff to put, I said, give me the bullet points, because my Rally for the Republic listeners need to know the bullet points. I've promised them to keep a big, long notebook, 74 days to fill it up, that they can use to share with their friends, family, loved ones, and any other interested Americans who have the opportunity to vote in this election and hopefully won't be apathetic, because apathy amongst our voters in this country is at an all-time high. Kamala wants to institute price controls, okay? She is done with capitalism. So that's why Donald Trump is referring to her now as Comrade Kamala, okay? She wants cap rent increases. Why should a landlord be able to decide what the value of his or her building is, his or her apartment that they're renting to you? Why should they be allowed to make a profit? Only Comrade Kamala now wants to tell you whether or not a company, a person, anybody is allowed to have a profit in the United States, which is interesting because if you don't have profits, there's nothing to tax. So how's she going to pay when she wants to have these prescription drug programs that she wants to do? And her $25,000 housing credit for first-time home buyers, it's a great policy if people actually had profits and extra income to put back into the economy. And she's going to give you a $6,000 child tax credit for the first year and $3,600 after that. And that's great and wonderful. But any one of us who's had children knows that kids are darn expensive. Kids are really, really expensive. And unless you somehow saved money after all those taxes she and AOC and Communist Tim want to levy against us, how in the world are you going to afford to pay for that child before you get the opportunity to go another 12 months to receive that child tax credit? I mean, this sounds great on paper, but it's a bunch of baloney. Makes me want to sing a song. But Kamala has her socialist plans, okay? That's what they are. And then she's going to, you know, raise the corporate tax rate, because you should always raise taxes on the people making money, because somehow socialism is going to turn into trickle-down economics. Haven't seen the math on that. Don't believe it for a second. Neither should you. But in addition to her new economic plans that they can't seem to publish anywhere, the other ideas she has sound like Donald Trump. She's a plagiarist, just like her mentor, Joe Biden, the racist that she's referred to, who she just loves now. She loves him. She wanted to be president years ago. He was a bad man and a racist. She couldn't ride those school buses. He wanted to ban her for being on the school buses with his own children. But now that, you know, he's not worried about the pigment of her skin because his kids can't ride that school bus with her anymore. And he knows that he screwed over Black America and Brown America all these years. She's happy to, you know, take praise from him, of him, with him. Doesn't matter, because he handed her the mantle to be the first. I think she's a woman. Obviously, we don't know that in the Democratic Party. Some people, they don't know how to define the term woman, like Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson still doesn't know. They've got other members and officials. They don't know what the word woman is, so we're going to be careful using that term with her. I'm sure somebody's going to say that's offensive, but in the Democratic Party, if you use those non-inclusive terms like woman, you're really a bad person. So we're going to stay away from that. And we're going to talk about what needs to be talked about, because Kamala is not just paper thin. She's a liar, a cheater, and a thief. And that's what we're going to stuck with as somebody sitting in the White House if you don't get off the sidelines and help Donald Trump. I don't care that you think he's mean. I don't care that you think he should shut his mouth sometimes. I don't care that you think he's using the poor choice of words. This is what we've got in America. Because, it's funny. I asked a relative, what does some of the rest of our relatives think? And they say, oh, we got just the worst candidates this cycle. And this. Well, guess what? I don't care if you think they're great or wonderful. Your choice is a communist or a socialist or a Marxist or however she wants to define herself at any given moment, because it's not going down on black and white. So you're going to have to pick a term. And then there's Tim, who's probably the Manchurian candidate. And they're all going to be there, and they're figuring out if you work hard, if you did work hard, if you've given back to this country, you're going for tax and spend here. That's all they care about. They're not solving America's problems. They're not helping middle-class America. Clearly, they're not helping the unions who weren't invited to their convention, but the Republican Party invited the Teamsters. Remember that. And the Republican Party started out with a prayer for the people of Israel and the hostages. The Democratic Party waited till the end, after pressure, after protests, after they had to figure out how to change the optics of their convention. They might as well have had the old imagery of police dogs biting black people show up, but this time having them being Israelis. I mean, that's what's going on at the Democratic Party. Ilhan Omar and her terrorist sympathizing friends are getting applauses from entering the hall. And the Democrats can only think, oh, wait, we better bring in some parents of hostages too. Think on that for a moment while I take a break. Thank you.
You are listening to Rally for the Republic with your host, Bryan Rudnick.
Bryan Rudnick, Rally for the Republic, day 4 of the Democratic Party convention, which I'm so thankful I'm not at, because after all, it's in the city of Chicago, where something like 2,000 people get shot and killed a year. I'm pretty sure none of those people are NRA members. I'm pretty sure none of those guns are legal, yet somehow they have them. It's amazing that a city propped up by the Democratic Party is so crime-ridden, and not just any crime, but violent crime, by the same people who've been banning guns. But you know what the problem is? They've been too busy paying for the illegal aliens to move into those cities, especially Chicago. That's why some of the black residents of Chicago are getting screwed here. And, that's where they want to hold the Democratic Party. But businesses, typically a convention comes into a city. Again, I've been to many, and a convention comes into a city and the businesses are thrilled because, just like the Super Bowl, that means lots of extra cash getting thrown around. And that means businesses, especially in the food and hospitality industry, are going to be making a killing. But in Chicago, they're shuttering their businesses because they know when the Democrats come to town, things get destroyed. And after all, they all look like Ilhan Omar and AOC and their friends and the BLM supporters that they've been propping up for years. And now their nominee is the woman who had the bail fund for the BLM supporters. So it's interesting that, Chicago is the place, home to the Obamas, home to America's leading crime rates. And they're somehow thinking that that's the best way to show off America and the best that the Democratic Party has to offer. And I got a few additional thoughts that I want to go over regarding the convention, because I think it really, America needs to understand that what you see on TV at these conventions is not everything going on. There are the backroom deals, and it's not quite the smoke-filled room situation of how the votes get cast. Because as you see at the Democratic Party, they still got these delegates that are not attached to anybody, aren't supporting anybody. They're throwing a fit, and they got to get their diapers on, and somebody's got to put a bottle in their mouth, and they're making trouble for Kamala and Manchurian candidate over there.
You are listening to Rally for the Republic with your host, Bryan Rudnick.
Hey, this is Bryan Rudnick at Rally for the Republic, and I want to thank you for tuning back in. As we sit here right now, it's day 3 of the Democratic Party's National Convention. We've already seen Mr. Obama and Barack on stage doing the weird Democrat body language thing. They're not sure whether to hug, and they definitely don't kiss. And Michelle's got some new hairdo, and Barack's upset he got upstaged by Mr. Obama. But while they're, patting themselves on the back, and Dougie's telling you about his first date with Kamala, which I think it's kind of funny because we're talking about the woman who's going to be the commander in chief. So I don't think we want to think about her being warm, fuzzy, and she cares about people's problems like AOC says. No, what we actually want to know is, can this woman save America? Can she cut prices of gas, food, insurance? No, she actually intends to raise them. But while they're going through their horse and pony show, poorly attended, crappy convention, they're having 1968 relived all outside. For those of you like me who weren't born then, there was some protesting going on, stuff like that. But a big difference, because our country was talking about civil rights. Now, the Democratic Party's big issue is they've got this Hamas wing that they associate with, because they support rampant terrorism in the Middle East. And while we sit here right now, while I'm recording, there have been missile attacks in the Golan. Earlier this week, there was bombardments in the north. And Kamala Harris has refused to state unequivocally, unconditionally, if she stands with Israel. But she's trying to play this Potomac two-step game, or maybe we should call it the Jordan River two-step. And, she wants to tell us that she stands with Israel, kind of, and then she kind of stands with the terrorists, and even the terrorists don't believe her, by the way. That's what they're doing protesting outside. They don't even believe her. Because she'll slap Netanyahu in the face. She'll slap Israel in the face. Doesn't matter. She's married to a Jewish American who claims, by the way, that, she's taken on his faith that he didn't even teach to his own kids. His kids are supporting the Palestinian terrorists too. But hey, that's their version. Some people are weird like that. Same people who put my family members on trains, I guess, in Europe in the 1930s and 40s, just like them. So we're sitting here, we're watching. Journalists don't know, like, 31, 34, 45 more days to go before Kamala Harris takes an interview. It's 75 days to an election. Nobody knows if she'll ever take an interview again. And the liberal media doesn't care, because they're just hoping that they're putting Donald Trump out to pasture now, because that's the whole game plan here. She doesn't sit for an interview. She never was legally elected to be the Democrat nominee, but yet somehow they're just letting this woman skate by. They're just giving her a nomination. Send the old guy out to California, let him screw up the country for another few months, and Kamala and her pantsuit will fix it all. Price controls, you name it. This woman is going to make America more expensive again. That should be her mantra. Kamala, making America more expensive again. Donald Trump is right. She'll put us into the Third World War. No question about it. Because literally, it will be a house of cards. A woman with no experience other than maybe oral sex. That's about all she knows. And then she opens her mouth and she cackles and she has word salads. And that's just not going to fly on the international stage of what requires diplomacy and knowing how to deal with strong men and even the strong women of some of these foreign nations. But she's got the shiny veneer pantsuit going, and she's got the media on her side, and the Obamas and the Clintons, and even AOC is there cheering her on, that she knows how to help fight for the everyday American. The same everyday Americans she put in jail. But what's even funnier is how many policies. You can't find a policy on her website still. I'm sure those of you listening didn't bother to go to her website. But typically by the time of a party convention, the candidate running for president of the United States has a website. And they have policies, and they explain to you their vision for America. And they go into great detail delineating their policy positions and why it's going to be better and safer and stronger, and the research that they're relying upon from, like, the Brookings Institute and the Heritage Foundation and all these well-established DC think tanks. And Kamala Harris, none of it. Doesn't have it, doesn't know it. But if Donald Trump said it and it's brilliant, like, don't tax Medicare and Social Security, don't tax tips as wages, she's all in favor. She's bought on. So if she favors Donald Trump's policies, why do we need her? Let's get to the bottom of it. She is no different than Joe Biden. Joe Biden's first campaign for Congress, he got up, he gave a speech, he plagiarized it, he was out of the race. Kamala Harris is here. She's not talking to anybody one-on-one, refuses. That would ruin the whole charade. Gets up, gives a speech, tells you about Tim Walz and, the man's embracing communism better than anybody else has ever done. And she's there plagiarizing Donald Trump. And when she's not plagiarizing Donald Trump, what is she doing? Advocating for socialist policies. Next week, you'll be living in Caracas. That's how it's going. Think about that. I'll be back in a moment to give you some final thoughts, too.
You are listening to Rally for the Republic with your host, Bryan Rudnick.
Bryan Rudnick here with my final thoughts on Rally for the Republic today. Democrat Convention Week that we're going through right now is not something that I've been able to come here and talk to you about throughout the week as much as I would have liked to, because as you've heard me mention, I have been consulting races around the country. I continue to do, but unfortunately, we had the Florida primary on Tuesday, August 20th. I was honored to be a part of a congressional team that I was hired for a little late in the year, but got hired to work for a really great, honorable individual who has given a lot to the community. And he made a run for Congress, and thanks to some mutual friends, we got connected, and I was able to help him reorganize the campaign and make a good showing, but not good enough to win, unfortunately. And we got in second place for somebody who was expected to not win, running in a 6-person race against 3 or 4 perennial candidates. We came in second, got 20% of the vote. The gentleman that won the nomination for the Republican Party has only been campaigning for about 25 years in the area. And this primary, like a lot of primaries, like even the presidential election, you've seen what happened, even Trump and DeSantis, and you've seen obviously now what's going on Trump and Kamala. You know, it gets tumultuous. There's mudslinging, there's negative ads, negative campaigning. And you've heard me mention before that negative campaigning works. It does, because people remember what they heard. They don't remember the rainbows and sunshine. It just doesn't work. Rainbows and sunshine are great. Everybody like Barack Obama is promising you hope. And I saw a great meme on Facebook with a picture of Kamala, similar to the color style of the Barack Obama famous hope poster. And it changed the words underneath to say nope. But again, only you, the Rally for the Republic listeners, can make that possible. So back to what I experienced in this campaign and why it's relevant to you. So, we saw Trump and Biden, they fought about their golf games at the debate and afterwards. And a lot of times you hear the candidate ads or candidates talk about how this one voted for that bill, or John Kerry voted for this before he voted against this. And there's flip-flopping and all sorts of things. Harry Truman had a famous expression, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. And that expression really holds true even today. As a professional in this field, helping candidates, one of the things you've got to make sure when you're working with a candidate, that the candidate has the chops, not just to campaign, because campaigning is different than legislating. And every candidate, whether they're an incumbent, challenger, whatever, first time, second time, 100th time, like Joe Biden, they've got to show that they have grit. And then they've got to show you that, or they've got to leave you with the impression that when they get to Congress, they're going to be so tough. Their mettle is going to be there. They've got principles. They've got a backbone. They're going up there to fight AOC in the squad. They're taking on Kamala. But we actually had a candidate in this race who was the opponent, who unfortunately the GOP is now stuck with as the nominee, who sounds like he hasn't left puberty yet. And he likes to throw mud. He has the same playbook every election. He gets up, he throws mud at his GOP opponents. Occasionally he wins a primary. And for 25 years, he's been losing elections practically nonstop. And unfortunately, the GOP voters in the area have not learned their lesson. And I talked to colleagues around the country, talked to a ton of people yesterday after the race who were asking me how it went. And they're all seeing the same things I'm seeing. We have a Republican Party that loves Donald Trump, and rightfully so. And every candidate thinks they can run and be Donald Trump. And it's ridiculous, because they can't be, because he's one of a kind. He truly is one of a kind. And these people think MAGA means tacking to the right. And it's ridiculous, because MAGA is not a tacking to the right strategy. MAGA is actually a populist strategy, a populist idea of bringing in people, of proving that the Republican Party is a big tent. That's why the president of the Teamsters Union was speaking at the Republican convention. Donald Trump understands the working man. He may not be the same as the carpenter or the plumber or the tradesman, but he is smart enough and has been around enough to know those guys and women now build America. as do the members of the Teamsters Union who drive the UPS trucks that get you your Amazon packages every day. So Donald Trump understands that he's got to bring disaffected Democrats over to the Republican Party. He has made that a cornerstone effort. He's gone to the Black community. He's gone to the Latino community, and he has said, you could do better. You've done worse with the Democrats, and the proof is in the pudding. And I worked for a candidate who was one of those disaffected Democrats. And the stupid leaders of the Republican Party locally, along with the minority voters, when I say minority, I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about the small amount of voters who in the Republican Party who came out to vote and impacted. It was less than 4,000 votes that impacted this election of 6 candidates. And some of them said, oh my God, I can't vote for a person who used to be a Democrat. Yet those are the same people who voted for Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. But yet somebody else they can't vote for because the person was a Democrat. The most ludicrous statement I've ever heard people claiming to be smart say. They didn't meet the candidate. They didn't talk to the candidate. They didn't find out that the candidate had more depth on economic policies than most people they could meet. They didn't care that the candidate cut taxes or, created over 100 jobs in the area and is known and got endorsed by all these business leaders for being a champion of economic growth. This is a problem in the Republican Party when we have blinders on and we go and we nominate the biggest loser we could find who's tacking to the right just because they're tacking to the right. And we're going to stand on these principles that allow us to lose. So if you're in the Republican Party and you're voting for a candidate based on a litmus test of how far to the right the candidate is, you're misunderstanding what needs to happen in order to save America. Because if you truly wanted to save America, you find the best candidate possible who can win, not the best candidate with the farthest to the right issues that agrees with you 100% of the time. Look what's happened with Donald Trump and the life issue. He's modified his position to ensure he gets elected. Start taking a page out of the Donald Trump playbook and play to win. Stop playing for perfection. It doesn't exist. We're all human beings. Because you know what happened? You get a nominee like this Joe Kaufman guy here in Florida 23, who's going to face career politician Jared Moskowitz. And Joe Kaufman has told the voters that he's tough. He can handle the pressure. Okay? I could tell you from dealing with this individual since I was 19 years old that he can't handle Tim Walz, AOC, or even a wet dream. Okay? This guy is such the wrong candidate that he went around throwing mud, as I mentioned earlier. And eventually we hit back. And I personally, in representing my client, put out a public statement about what I know of this guy and why he's not suited for office, why he lacks the credentials and qualifications to be a member of Congress, and why he will lose the general election. And mark my words, unless some miracle happens, he's going to lose because the people who voted for him don't understand the numbers. They don't understand the electorate in a purple district. They don't understand that he is the worst possible candidate to put up against this very strong career politician who is significantly better funded, who's on TV nonstop, who knows how to play down the middle, is already playing down the middle, and has had this prior support of Governor Ron DeSantis, even though he's a Democrat. And this Joe Kaufman character is going to demonstrate by his actions that he is not going to be the candidate to take on AOC and Ilhan Omar. And the reason why is because when he got attacked, instead of getting in the fight and proving why he's in the arena, he had lawyer letters sent to myself, to the candidate, to the publisher of the Florida Jolt that published the article, demanding a cease and desist. So I, being who I am, as I've told you, I never back down from a fight. I've offered to buy him a skirt. I asked him what size. I showed him one I found on Amazon that comes in multiple colors. I've offered him any color he wants. I've offered him his size. If he needs two, I'd even be gracious enough to get him two because he should campaign in a skirt to just let everybody know who he truly is. I've also offered him a box of tissues because anybody running for Congress that resorts to sending out cease and desist letters to somebody who told the true story about their background after, by the way, some of the attacks he made on my client were completely and 200% false, and he should be grateful. I haven't been able to convince my client to sue him for that defamation and slander. But if they have to resort to a cease and desist letter over public statements that have been said about him. I mean, some of the statements I mentioned where he campaigns like a middle school girl with a grudge. Others, he hasn't had a real job. Others, he has stolen money from donors. I'm willing to prove all of these facts. If he wants to challenge me, I'd be happy to go through the discovery process with him, force him to open his books and records and show that the money is not going where he tells donors effectively where it should be going, because he can't win and he doesn't deliver even in his nonprofit organizations. I believe I used the term he goes on quixotic adventures. I think that perfectly describes the way this man has acted for about 25 years. He is a career loser. And he will lose the election. And this is what we, as members of the Republican Party, as true conservatives, if you want to save the republic, you've got to understand that this program is not for those losers who are going to claim to be conservatives and then go throw mud and cry and use lawyers to defend themselves against the attacks, because those aren't the people who are going to be able to take on AOC and the squad. They've just proven it. If you're so scared of the truth and somebody calls you out on it, and your best defense is a cease and desist letter, you're like a baby girl who will never be able to take on the radical left. Because if that's what scares you now, what do you think this person does in Congress when AOC starts her fights? What do you think happens in the general election when Jared Moskowitz, who's well-trained at debating, who's well-trained at fighting, who's well-trained at advocating for his positions, gets up and shoos you out? Whether he does it on cable news or at the local debate, if he's ever courageous enough to do that, because like Kamala, he only does one an election cycle, if that. But the candidates, and these types of candidates are all across the country, are chicken shit. And they're going to cry over spilled milk. And if they're going to do that in an election, what are they going to do when they get to Congress? So please, if you're like me and you truly care and love this country and you truly care and love Israel, do not get duped into supporting these whiny little candidates who want to just tack far to the right, create their bunch of cheerleaders and sycophants, and then they siphon off resources that the Republican Party could use with good candidates and other races to win. It would be great if we all had enough resources to field candidates in every seat in every election and take back this country. But we don't have that luxury. Okay, we're not the radical left with their George Soros funded billionaires. We don't have that. And we've got Donald Trump, who they're throwing 3 or 4 wars his way, and he needs help too. But we've got to help the down ballot candidates, and we cannot waste it on whiny little spill the milk candidates like Joe Kaufman here in South Florida. Because to save America, we need real fighters in Congress. We need true conservatives. We need people with grit. Not people who can put an ad together claiming they have grit. Not people who take photo ops with tough people like border security agents and chiefs like Tom Homan, or people who take pictures with people who were on the front lines in Israel, trying to somehow spill that affinity over to them as being tough. That's not tough. It really isn't. And those people are as fake as Kamala Harris. So buyer beware. You're a voter. You're looking at the candidates. You're better off not voting for the whiny Republican candidate, because you're not going to get what you're trying to buy. You're not going to get a leader. You're not going to get a fighter. All you're going to get is somebody who's got a squishy backbone and is going to cry when AOC looks in their direction. So please keep working with me. Keep listening. Keep helping me champion our cause to take back our country. I'm Bryan Rudnick. It's Rally for the Republic. I'll be back probably tomorrow to talk about Kamala's, I'm sure, very inspirational speech. I just can't wait to go to sleep listening to it. And I hope the same is true for you. Goodbye. God bless. And again, let's save America together.
Thank you for joining us on Rally for the Republic, where we are fighting for America's future. Visit 1776coalition.com. Rally for the Republic podcast is available on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and download. Join Bryan Rudnick next time as we continue to fight for the American way of life and challenge the hypocrisy. This is Rally for the Republic.